So hello, everyone. I'm your host today. My name is Roxy Ameri. I'm an account executive here at Mixmax. And I'm super excited to really dive into this topic today, which is, of course, what 2020 holds for sales and success with an amazing panel here. So first, let's go ahead and introduce our guests. First and foremost, John, I'd like to introduce you. It's a man who really doesn't need much of an introduction. John Barrows, CEO of JBarrows Sales Training. So John's consultancy, for those who are not familiar, essentially helps level up teams' outbound strategies. And what I personally love about your teachings, John, is really your push for reps to do their proper homework before making an intro. And also a little plug here, as you guys can see on his shirt. It's just too cool not to mention. He just released an adorable children's book, I Want to Be in Sales When I Grow Up, dedicated to his daughter. So I encourage everyone to check that out. Thank you so much for joining us today, John.
Thanks so much for having me.
Next, we have Kyle Smith. He is the director of sales and customer success at the Bridge Group, where their CEO, Trish, literally wrote the sales development playbook. Super cool. Kyle has deep experience honing the inside sales models at high growth companies. And so I'm personally a really big fan of his advice on kind of speaking to challenges rather than product in demos. And also always ensuring that you are delivering value as a rep. Kyle, I know you mentioned that you and John are partners in crime at conferences. So I know this will make great commentary. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, last but not least, we have our very own Don Father sitting here, our head of revenue here at Mixmax, Don Erwin. Don was one of the very first reps at LinkedIn, and after massive growth, he went on over to help scale teams at startups like AutoMile, and of course now here at Mixmax. I personally learned a lot from Don about really empathy and the importance of really following up from him. So, great to see you, Don, especially not across the table at a quarterly business review. So thank you for joining here.
And our QBR is in a couple of hours, so get ready.
Okay. Anyway, so welcome, gentlemen, and on with the show. So pumped to talk about today's topic, which is, of course, again, what 2020 holds for sales and success teams. We did tell the audience that there would be no fluff, so I am hoping that you guys will all deliver in the 40-ish minutes that we have together, so no pressure. So to get right into it, the first area I wanted to explore is the topic of sales leadership. So, it's no secret that sales is hard. I can speak from experience and that we have aggressive quotas to hit. So my first question is, how should leaders approach short-term versus long-term growth? And what I mean by this is, fast growth at any means versus, sustainable and responsible growth. So John, I'm going to put you on the spot and let you take it on first.
Yeah, I actually think this is one of the hardest things everybody's dealing with right now. I saw this interview a while back where they interviewed 50 of the top CEOs in the world. And they said, if you could make a decision today that was a huge benefit 5 years down the road for your organization, for the environment, for your employees, right? But it cost you 1 penny off your stock price today, would you make that decision? 50 out of 50 CEOs said no, which is sad. Because what their point was if we made that decision that impacted our stock price by 1 penny today, we wouldn't make it for 5 years. So I wouldn't be able to do that. And I think we're just in such a short-term results, especially in the public, especially in the funding world, because all these VCs are stuffing all these monies into companies and they're looking for short-term growth. But I think they're really, really taking their eye off of long-term success. And I don't want to pick on anybody right now, but I mean, you look at examples. You look at examples like Uber and all these companies that are just have thrown so much money at driving short-term with the hope. Now, don't get me wrong, their evaluations are massive, but I mean, you're starting to see the bricks crumble, right? So I think from a leadership standpoint, you have to do obviously both. And I'm going to caveat with this: it depends on what you sell and who you sell to, and enterprise versus SMB and all that other stuff. But I think, very tactically, if you just tier out your accounts and you figure out who are the prime ones, the ones that are really going to make you, succeed as an organization in the long term, the logos that'll make a difference, the tier twos that are kind of the singles and doubles that'll pay your bills, if you will. And then the tier threes, which are maybe the not optimal customers. And you go through that process and really hone in on what those are. You can then start to focus on those areas with different approaches. Right? Where the tier ones, that's the quality approach where you take the time, you do the research, you go and network and try to find out how to, engage with those businesses from a long-term play. But the tier twos, that's where the singles and doubles come in, where, you can hit the volume up. You can, really try to optimize that sales process to make it as efficient as possible. And the tier threes are ones that I used to throw away because I was like, they were bad customers anyways, but now I actually love them. And I think they're great for practice. And, especially for kids coming on short term, when they come on in the short term, you don't want to give them your best leads. You don't want to give them your best accounts. You give them some shitty ones, right? Let them cut their teeth a little bit. I mean, Morgan, when he came on board with me, I didn't want him calling into like the tier one, SaaS companies in San Francisco. I'm like, you out of your mind? So I gave him a bunch of tier three accounts to just get him going. And he got some small deals. He got his confidence built. He built his skill sets a little bit, and then he started moving upstream, and now he's a lot more strategic with the accounts that he's going after. So I think tactically that's the way I do it. I think macro level, though, I think we, as a society and as a business society, I think we have a huge problem on our hands with these short-term results that everybody's trying to drive so fast.
Super interesting. No, thank you for that. Kyle, curious to hear kind of your thoughts on that and whether you have a different point of view or if you agree.
No, I do not have a different point of view, unfortunately. I'd love to battle it out on this one, but
Kyle.
I think we'll fight later. I've been watching Succession, so I'm in a fighting mood. But I think path to profitability is going to become increasingly more important. Everyone talks about it, but I don't see anyone executing actions to actually start to take a turn. And we've been so focused on massively overhiring, not focusing on productivity per rep, just getting bodies or butts in seats and not actually enabling them appropriately, whether it's from a resource standpoint or from a training standpoint, and just trying to grow by any means necessary and claw for revenue and logos rather than actually having a responsible growth strategy, which would lead to a more stable, I guess you could say, growth plan versus, again, this model like John talked about with some of the recent IPOs that we've seen where people are getting crushed because you're losing $30 million a quarter and the path to profitability does not exist. So I think that's happening in the public sector for sure, but that's going to start trickling down to even the startups or Series B and C type companies as VCs start to realize how volatile that's getting at the top end if you don't have this IPO acquisition or bust type strategy or approach.
Yeah, and actually just to jump in on that, Kyle, I think you brought up a good point. Like, I just recently here at Dreamforce, I'm here at Dreamforce all week. I've been talking to companies and they're having this strategy of going after the enterprise. And I'm like, why? Like, well, because I'm like, first of all, do you know how many other companies are going after the enterprise?
All of them.
Why are you going after the F500 or F5, 1000? Just because they're good logos? I'm like, do you know how much those huge companies abuse little small vendors when they come on board? Like, I've punted on the whole. I actually don't want to work with huge corporations. They're a pain in the ass. They suck out all my resources, and I got no you know what I mean? And just to get a logo, like, I'd rather be profitable with customers who give a shit and actually are, want to work with me and are engaged, right? And those are way more profitable for me than these huge organizations that really don't care. They treat small vendors like they're going out, you know what I mean? And so I think that's a huge part where people are enamored with growth, and they're not only enamored with growth, but they're enamored with logos of growth so that they can say they work with Google, they work with Salesforce. It's like, okay, but maybe a couple of those to validate you, but then really go after, again, the singles and doubles are the ones that pay the bills.
No, absolutely. And this is super interesting to hear as a rep, somebody who, is kind of a hunter, is somebody who loves to kind of go out and try to get net new logos. And I often don't think kind of about the other side of the house, which is, all right, so is this a good customer fit? How is this going to translate in this handoff process? So actually, Don, I think you're really unique in that being the head of revenue, you cover both sales and customer success, both sides of the house. So curious to also hear about how you approach kind of the balance between the two.
Yeah, so I mean, this sounds a little cliche-ish, but hire good management and good support around you. I think both with what John and with what Kyle said, if you're building, for success and getting your reps, it's not hiring 100,000 people and just think that by increasing the number of sales reps, you're going to increase your revenue. If you don't build the support system around it that enables you to make the people that you hire successful. Let's hire 5 or 6 people. Let's hire the right marketing team. Let's hire the right tools around them to allow these 5 or 6 people to get to their number. Let's show some repeatability. Let's show some consistency. Then we can +1 our way to whatever number we ultimately want to get into. As I've seen, both on the sales and customer success side, is just over hiring and not necessarily building the support teams and the support structure around these teams that allow them to be successful. And if you think that you can hire 100 sales reps and just go 100% outbound, well, give it a try and see how that works for you. But also, I think, and managing both sides of the fence, having a very solid, relationship between your closers and success side, and that transition from closed won deal and introduction into your success side is crucial. Get it wrong, good luck with that. But so, I mean, that's kind of my take on it. I'm fortunate enough to have hired 2 amazingly good, solid managers on both the hunting and the farming side. They both know exactly what they want. They both know exactly what they need to make their teams successful. A lot of really good communication in order to enable us to provide them with the tools that they need to be successful. So that's my take.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And that's actually a nice segue to kind of the next question on this topic, which is, you kind of mentioned having really a robust team of managers is super important for you. So, kind of as the youngin in the room, I want to talk a little bit about a new trend that I've actually experienced in my very short time in the field, which is that at these high growth companies, there's a really noticeable pattern of kind of younger, less experienced reps that, get promoted and moved into management roles. So I'd love for, anybody in the room, Kyle, we can start with you on this one to hear a little bit about how you guys, what you've heard about this trend, and also how we can make sure that leaders are better ensuring that these younger reps that are now moving into management are set up for success.
Yeah, I think this one's really difficult. One, because what we just talked about, that need or desire to scale extremely quickly, is so prevalent in all of the companies. Like, I operate only in tech, and I think John, basically all tech companies, right? You guys, tech companies. So when we're talking about the speed with which we need to scale, bringing on that headcount is extremely difficult. So it'd be easy to say, okay, we want someone with outside management expertise at either the frontline management level or director level, but where are those people? The companies are all located in the hubs, whether it's San Francisco, New York, Boston, Chicago, Atlanta, Austin now to some extent. But we are starving for talent. So the desire is to promote from within because those are known entities, but those individuals don't necessarily have the vision as to where we want to go. So they can see very clearly in the rearview mirror. They know where we've been, which is super helpful because they know what landmines not to step on and mistakes that have already been made, but they don't necessarily know how to take us to where we're trying to go. There's an extremely funny book written, Disrupted, and I think the author called it the dumbification of an organization, where your top line leader is like a B. And then instead of hiring an A who knows more than them from outside the organization with outside expertise, they promote a C. And then the C hires or promotes a D. And then all of a sudden we're looking at an executive who was a B to begin with and who has since made decisions that leads to a frontline leader who was maybe halfway decent at the job, but can only tell a rep how to do the job the way that they did it. And doesn't necessarily know how to advance their skills, provide training and coaching, or that executive leader doesn't know how to coach the manager on how to coach the rep. So it's like this snowball effect that takes place, all because we're starving for talent and those resources don't exist and we're not enabling them properly. So I understand it's not an easy problem to solve, but one that's having real significant consequences when it comes to rep performance and their ability to grow from their frontline managers as resources.
I mean, that's spot on. I also like to advise some folks in companies or managers to beware of just thinking that hiring your best salesperson to be your manager.
It's the biggest mistake every time.
Mistake that you can do.
Yeah. You lose your best rep, and now you have a bad manager.
I mean, there's your BC manager hiring C's and D's. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I love your point there. You always hire somebody that you think is absolutely good enough to take your job from you.
Absolutely.
Surround yourself with people that are smarter than you and watch the magic happen. But yeah, just a quick little anecdote. Thinking that you could turn your best salesperson into your next sales manager fails more so than it works every once in a while. But I definitely be careful of that pitfall.
Yeah, and why does it happen? Because the leader who's in that position doesn't necessarily have the confidence, the strength, or the experience to resist the pressure from that top sales leader who's just saying, I want to be a manager, I want to be a manager, I want to be a manager, and say, relax, we have a path that we will take you through if that's what you want to do next. But we're going to slow you down because just promoting you right now would be a disservice to the company, not the right decision for the company, the people you would lead, or to you, because you will fail in this next position. You'll get the title, great. Maybe you get a pay bump and that takes you on the path you want to go down. But that doesn't mean that you're actually executing your job function well or doing anyone any service.
Amen.
Very interesting. John, do you want to jump in here?
I mean, I think it's the whole, promoting your best is the worst idea. It's that whole consciously competent, that thing where you start a job and you're unconsciously incompetent. You don't know what you don't know. Then you move to conscious uncompetence where you know what you don't know. And then you move to consciously competent where you know what you know, and then unconsciously competent where you just do. Unfortunately, the A players are usually the unconsciously competent. They just do what they do. They're the artists, if you will, in sales, where they're just really good at time management. They're really good at relating to people, but they can't replicate that. They can't show other people how to do it. And so when they get into management and they're then told, okay, now take what you just did and show everybody else how to do it, they kind of look at you like, what do you mean? Just do what I do. Like work harder. I don't know, say this, right? So I don't want that rep. I want that rep to Kyle's point. Let that be that rep be the best rep. First of all, they're going to make a shitload more money anyways. Best rep than being a manager. And second of all, you're going to make them miserable. But if I want that B+ rep, I want that rep who's consciously competent, who knows the process, who knows the structure. And that's what I tell reps all the time. Like, that's why I treat sales way more scientifically than artistically, because if you ever want to move into a position of leadership in sales, you have to be able to put in a repeatable process that you can coach other people on. Because if you can't, there's no way you're going to scale. You can't hire, and companies don't even scale. Like, I'm a big believer, like, hire A players, sure, but we can't all be A players. And by the way, if you try to build a company with all players, it'll eventually rip itself apart. You do have to have role players at a certain level, and you have to have people that can fit into a process and a structure and execute on that process and structure. But you have to have somebody who can build that process and structure, and usually best reps aren't the ones who can do that.
So interesting, especially for me as a rep to hear that. Really, really great feedback from all of you guys. I'm going to continue moving this along a little bit to the other side of the house. So we talked about kind of sales leadership, management. Now let's talk about customer success. So kind of on this topic, I recently just read a really crazy stat which said that Salesforce actually plans to get to their numbers next year 70% just off their existing customer base. So just upselling to their existing base, versus actually going out and getting net new logos and new customers like you were talking about earlier, John. So again, as a rep, I'm not too in tune with this just because I'm so focused on, getting these new logos. It's really thrilling for me. It's exciting. But then, on the other hand, Don, someone like you who kind of sees both sides of the house, like we mentioned before, you have to really be cognizant of this pass off. So Don, this one I'll have you start with, which is question here is kind of one of the top areas for churn is just like a really bad transition from, sales to CS. So, and whether a transition even happens at all, right? Yes. So my question is, how can companies really nail this handoff between sales and CS?
My opinion, you're doing it during the initial sales cycle. You're introducing during the initial sales cycle what is to be expected once you close the initial deal. Set those expectations early. as far as you're going to get properly onboarded. We're going to set up time with you to get you to value as quickly as possible. We're going to do all of the necessary steps. It's not just going to be a closed, pure hunter team close and then up to the next deal. And so there has to be a process in place that starts during the sales cycle that lets the customer know that this is exactly what to expect. Then once the deal is closed, for Mixmax, it's easy for us. We kind of dog food our own product a little bit to be able to automate some of those handoff processes upon hitting closed one in Salesforce. All of the motion and the sequences already start happening to the customer that welcomes on board. Here's the next steps. Here's what to do. Here's the calendar for your implementation person that's going to get you kickstarted, everything. So, to me, this is a huge piece. If you're running an ARR business, the key there is that initial R. If you're not having business recur consistently year over year, have fun with that. And that is growing your business, land and expand. It's expanding within your existing current customer base. And so getting those customers to value as quickly as possible and having a very specific process built out that starts again during the sales process and continues after the initial deal is closed, a very smooth transition process to your CS team or your account management team, your whatever team you're calling it, has to be in place. It has to be followed, and it has to be well defined. So.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. Kyle, I'm curious if you can think of any companies off the top of your head that are really doing this really well, that have really nailed this transition. And then the contrary, but let's stick to the positive.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a customer that I'm working with actively, a Midwest customer who sells human capital management software, and they do an excellent job. They have all the phases that we would see in a typical SaaS company, with a heavy adoption on that CS function, where the new business transition to implementations and the implementations hand off to a CS rep, and the CS rep's interaction and engagement with support as well is extremely dialed in. And it's for the two reasons that Don just talked about. It's communication and expectation setting, as well as operational support. So if the information exchange is really kludgy and kind of hacky and difficult to understand what's already happened, what needs to happen next, and people have to dig for that, then they get sloppy and just jump into a call and put the responsibility on the now customer to educate them of where they are in the process and what they need, instead of being more prescriptive. So, yeah, I think it's those two things. Unfortunately, again, we need some more disagreement in here, but I think it's expectation setting and operational support to make sure that handoff is clean.
Totally. Well, you said it, not me. Let's still stir the pot a little bit. I agree with you. So I wouldn't be a good host if I didn't bring up this contentious topic, which is, who should really be owning renewals and upsells at the company? Is it a CSM? Is it an account manager? Or do we, bring back in the AE, bring them back in there, upon renewal? So who really should be taking ownership? And John, I'm going to let you start with this debate.
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up. I was actually having this conversation last night. I fundamentally really don't understand the difference between a customer success manager and an account manager these days. It's like SDRs and BDRs, like people mix match those titles all the time. So I think there's a lot of confusion right now. But at the end of the day, renewals take care of themselves if adoption is there. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, your renewal rate is in direct proportion to your adoption rate. If your adoption rate is low, your renewal rate is going to be low. If you're not, so that's why I think customer success. I mean, we just hired for next year, like she's starting in December, but we just hired a director of customer success because I know I could at least add 50% revenue to my personal book of business if I just had somebody going in and talking to my clients about what else we could do with them, how we can integrate more effectively. Because most people, and then the transition, I think the key part of the transition there to customer success, and Don and Kyle tied into this, is making sure that the person who bought it is engaged with the person who's implementing it. Too often I see from a sales standpoint, sales rep sells for me, it'd be the VP of sales is the champion, right? VP of sales, champion. We bought this, rah, 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 negotiate hard, and then flip. Okay, we signed the contract, peace. And then after you sign the contract, it's like you get relegated down to this like non-power person who usually wasn't involved in the decision-making process is kind of being told to implement this, doesn't really have a ton of context around it. Oh, and by the way, the negotiation that your that you had with the VP of sales and whatever discount you ended up giving them, that's now the floor price. And if you don't keep engaging in that executive or whoever bought it and why they bought it and keep reminding them throughout about the ROI and the adoption, then when it comes to renewal, you're going to be, if you don't have to, I mean, first of all, now your price is here. So your discount's going to go further from there. And if the adoption isn't there, the discount's going to be massive. And that's why, you know, customer success, or I don't know, account managers, whatever, they send the, you know, the piece, they do the piece of shit QBRs, like once every quarter, they throw a bunch of numbers up and say, look at how great we're doing, not really engaging with the client about what their needs are, where they're trying to go, or, you know, what their objectives are and how they're trying to achieve them. Then, so they do those quarterly crappy things that nobody likes. And then they send out the 90, 60, 30-day email saying your renewal's coming up in 90 days, your renewal's coming up in 60 days, your renewals. And then in, you know, day 365, they're like, hey, could you please sign? I'll give you a 50% discount if you stay with us. I mean, it's just a sad process all the way through of not adding value. So if you set expectations, you make the right transition, you keep the right people involved, and you keep them engaged and adopting your stuff, I mean, renewals shouldn't really be a problem at all.
Well, I definitely agree with that. Does anybody else want to stir the pot, or?
Yeah, my take on this is the most annoying answer that anyone ever gives, which is it depends. And I think it depends if the upsell or cross-sell in particular, I'll hit on that point, versus the renewal or retention piece of it. So I think John did a really good job of covering that aspect of the sales process. And I agree 100% on the adoption piece. For the cross and upsell, I really think it depends on if the same person who bought the first thing buys the second, third, and fourth thing. So if it's a new business sales motion, sometimes it makes sense to have a different resource who's managing the cross and upsell, because it's barely a cross and upsell. If you sell to, you know, stick with John's example, if you sell to the VP of sales, but your add-on product is to the COO or somebody in operations, where there's not necessarily a direct tie in the companies in your ideal customer profile are large enough to where those people don't have cubes sitting right next to each other, the motion of going out and effectively prospecting into a new functional group within the organization isn't necessarily the same skill set that person who hammered on adoption and got that customer to trust and not think about life without your organization is like. So I think it depends on, for cross and upsell, who buys the second, third, and fourth thing.
But, and actually, Kyle, you bring up a good point. I think what I'm seeing right now is, like, so I do sales training, right? Mostly for outbound prospecting, that type of stuff. And I'm seeing a lot more organizations bring customer success or account managers into my training because they're being asked to cross-sell, upsell. And I'll tell you right now, they don't like it. It's not they don't like my training. They don't like to sell. Most of the time, account managers and customer success, they get into account management and customer success because they didn't want to sell. And they have this, and don't get me wrong, I think they have this negative perception of sales that it's like, oh, I got to push the client to do things, you know. And really, if you take the word sales out of the equation, customer success and sales are the exact same thing. Like you're just trying to help the client achieve a goal, right? Or solve a problem. But most of the perception is they get into those roles, and now organizations are coming to them saying, oh, no. I know you were just meant to just kind of make sure that this customer is happy, but now you got to cross-sell, upsell. You need to go find other opportunities, and and they put the word sales in there, and these customer success people are like, ugh, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think there's a huge perception reality component to this of what, again, sales is all about to blend that a little bit better. But it's also a very dangerous thing for companies to make that hard shift of what they used to consider customer success and account management which was really just servicing the customer. And I think that's probably where account management and customer success differ. If I think about it, account management was basically whatever you need from a client standpoint, right? Like just let us know what you need. I'm your single point of contact. Call me up if you got problems, whatever. Whereas customer success is no. We got to make sure you're using our stuff. Like, we want to make sure that you get the most, because most people only use 10 to 20% of the functionality, whatever they buy, right? And that's the problem. I mean, let's pick Salesforce for an example. At LinkedIn, these are perfect examples of products that people only use a fraction of what the power of those tools are. A fraction. I mean, LinkedIn Sales Navigator, Anybody using everything that LinkedIn Sales Navigator has to bring to the table? No, reps kind of scroll through, they pick a name, they're like, oh, that looks like a good account. Let me send them an email. Yay. You know what I mean? Like that's how
they use the free search version with a slightly slicker UI. Barely emails. It's like, oh,
right.
What cost for that?
So that's where customer success really comes in, is to show me what I bought here. Most of the time people buy it for that 10 to 20%, right? Because they're trying to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Customer success is to get them to show that, yes, we're going to optimize that 10 to 20% to make sure we solve that problem. But, oh, by the way, here's all the other 80% of the stuff that you can do so that, you know, you can get the most out of this, and ultimately your renewal takes care of itself.
Absolutely. And actually, while we're kind of in the space of defining the roles, like, you know, what is really the core difference between customer success and sales? Kyle, I know that you've mentioned that, you know, there's going to be, looking ahead to 2020, like a lot more specialization in the CS role. So I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts on, you know, what's changing there, and what do you think is going to stay the same?
Yeah, I think we're going to get more consistency as more people like John, like Trish, like Don talk about the CS function, and there's more expertise injected into that. And like Gainsight, for instance, has a ton of great content focused on the CS role. I think there's going to be a more universal or a more standardized approach to customer success. Whereas right now, anyone that I talk to, what they're calling CSMs or customer success as a whole is drastically different across the board. There's no standard implementation of customer success. And I think what we'll start to see is people start to get more specific in what the CSM does, and maybe a reintroduction of the account manager role, or at least just being a little bit more specific about which piece of the process each functional group owns, so that there's easier hiring, honestly, across companies. Because right now, if you recruit a CSM from one company into your company, it's really difficult to say that they're going to have the level of expertise or the specific skill sets that you're looking for, because they might have owned implementations and adoption, and you want them to do cross-sell, upsell. So I think we're going to start to see some more role specialization, definitely in that post-sale function, which is currently just being branded CS.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I joined and I built out our CS team, we had customer success managers here already, and my vision was we're building a hunter-farmer kind of an account management team, but we call them. I in all honesty, and to a point John made previously, was I thought the difference between an account manager, an AM, and a CSM was just spelling. In all honesty, I thought.
And you were correct.
and fundamentally, I'm correct, because my CSMs now are responsible for the renewal and the upsell, and they have an upsell quota, and so on. So they're basically an account management team. So it's semantics, I guess.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll throw something out there. Just I don't want to say it's controversial, but I see from a trend standpoint. I actually think, and follow me on this one. I think that SDRs, inbound SDRs, I think there's a strong possibility that inbound SDRs are going to get replaced by customer success people.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why. If you think that if you follow corporate executive board, you know, whatever, that by the time somebody comes to a, you know, challenger sale, by the time somebody comes to us, they're already 60 to 70% of the way through, whatever the number is. Like, we agree that customers are getting more educated, right? So through artificial intelligence, account-based marketing, right, all that stuff, client, you know, G2 crowd, clients are being far, far more educated. So by the time they come to us, right, and right now, the intro role in sales is that inbound SDR role, right? The 22-year-old kid. So, but let me ask you something. If you are 60 to 70% of the way through the sales process and you've done your homework and you know what you want, do you want to talk to some 22-year-old wet behind the ear piece of, you know, kid who's going to ask you bant questions and force you through a piece of shit demo? Like, no, you want to talk to somebody who knows what they're talking. I mean, think about it this way, like pick Verizon or Comcast. Like, you have a problem with your cable, right? So you call in, you reboot the router yourself, right? And then you call into the 1-800 line and you get somebody who's going to walk you through a bunch of piece of crap questions. And you go through like 30 minutes of just trying to figure out what the problem is, right? And then they can't figure it out. And so they push it upstream. And then all of a sudden you're talking to somebody who now knows what they're talking about, but now you're frustrated with them because that transition was horrible. So I actually think customer success people, I think if we're going to continue to put all this marketing and all this money and artificial intelligence into educating the consumer about our stuff. So by the time they come to us, I think the SDR role specifically is going to fundamentally shift and move up rather significantly, and be more of a salaried role with somebody who knows what they're talking about in the industry, who can walk people through and guide them through a trial and help them make the decision more effectively. So it's not going to be called customer success, but I actually think a lot of customer success type people will shift over to the SDR role as it sits today.
It's interesting that you say that, John, because I'm noticing a trend here in San Francisco as we're talking to companies. And maybe this goes back to Roxy's point previously on how Salesforce is going to grow their revenue next year by just focusing on existing customers. There are a lot of companies, a lot of tech companies here in San Francisco that are hiring SDRs to support their CS and their account management teams, not just SDRs any longer for the hunting teams and for your account executives, but hiring SDRs to go in and take that existing customer and, okay, we sold to department 1, but our product's good enough for 5 or 6 departments, and go in and find those additional extras. And yeah, I'd love to see that shift of your hunting side of the house having that innate ability to close and to get the sale and to be, but have that CSM account manager product knowledge ability. That's the trick there.
Well, now you're getting in my whole other blow up the model here. I think the predictable revenue model, piss off. I think it's gonna break, and it has to, because the predictable revenue model of segmentation of roles, of inbound first, then outbound, just to set up meetings, and then AE, SMB, mid-market, enterprise, and right. I think that whole thing, that is fantastic for companies like to scale. Right, internally, because it's great, segmentation of roles, and then you grow your sales team, right? It is a horrible customer experience. Nobody, I'll go back to the cable example, nobody wants to be transitioned 5 times before they talk to somebody, and every single one of those transitions is broken. From the BDR to the AE, that never goes well, and that's never smooth. From the AE to the CS or to the SE, right, the sales engineer, that's never smooth. This SE usually just gets plugged in and says, how can I help? Then the AE to the SE to the executive team, that never is transitioned well. And then to the CSM. So that whole thing, I actually think we're going to move back to full cycle sales, inside sales, full cycle sales, supported by customer success and account-based marketing. But one rep is now going to own the full cycle sales so that they can actually work with the client all the way through and optimize it from a lead gen standpoint with account-based marketing.
Love that. Taking notes here, by the way.
I love the idea. I think that there's a significant skills gap that exists that will need to be closed to enable that. Yeah, but I think
it also depends on what you sell. Enterprise, mid-market, SMB, right? So let's put that out there as well.
But I think we're heading in that direction, though, because if you think about even when I graduated, there was, I think, 3 sales programs in existence at the collegiate level, and now there's 100. Never mind all the minors and the clubs and everything. So people are coming out of school with actual background and education. Exactly. So people are coming out of school with some background information or knowledge as to what it means to be a professional seller in a B2B environment. And then also have already made the conscious decision that they want to be in a sales role. So maybe we can start closing that gap because of what's happening at the collegiate level. But I think there is a significant skills gap that exists today that would have to be closed to enable that.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, really great points, guys. I'm just being cautious of the time. Do you want to wrap up this piece on customer success and shift the focus a little bit? This is actually going to be our last topic because we've all had really great things to say. So thank you. So now let's shift the focus a bit to the thing that pretty much affects all sides of the house, sales, success, which is technology. So no secret to those of us who, of course, sit here in SF, just down the street from Dreamforce, one of the largest tech conferences across the country, that our tool stack is constantly changing. It's constantly evolving. New technologies are popping up left and right. So when really speaking to technology, I'm interested to hear what you guys think are, the really exciting trends and shifts that are happening. And then as a follow-up to also hear what you guys think is overhyped. So I'll really let any of you guys kick it off with this one.
So I'll go. I'm a big fan of automation. I mean, automation's been around for 100 years, but I think in the sales world, and it's not just automating things to just take the human out of the process, but it's being smarter about it. It's I think the top-notch sales companies or just companies in general are augmenting the sales process and not just automating it, using automation type tools to allow them to continue to personalize, to John's continuous point of doing your homework massively upfront before you even start getting out there, but using automation to make that a little bit easier for you to be able to continue to use the tools and your sales stack tools that your company's provided to you to be able to personalize that and to get out there at a little bit more scale. So not a big fan of just automating things and taking the human element out of it. Still, I'm the Don father only because I'm 237 years old. I still believe that in today's technology age that people buy from people, period. They buy from people they like, they buy from people they trust. Automation takes that kind of away. So automation that helps you augment your sales process by staying personalized, but doing it a little bit more at scale is a trend that I hope will continue. I believe absolutely will continue. It's my 2 cents.
Awesome. Thank you, Don Father. John,
yeah, I think the AI piece is a little bit overhyped, not in terms of where we could end up with it potentially, but we're not close in my opinion. So we can talk about it all we want, and this is kind of parlaying off of what Don just said, but I haven't seen anyone even sniff what would be considered a close to successful implementation of anything that would even be a fringe case for AI. We are so far away from it. I think that the technology is not quite there. And then additionally, we do not have the people in sales or revenue ops or marketing with the knowledge of how to practically either set it up or interpret the data or make any meaningful actions off of what AI is potentially capable of doing. So I think we're talking about replacement of job functions with AI because people seem to like it. Must be get a lot of clicks because everyone keeps talking about it. But in terms of practical implementation in every company that I work with, we are far, far away. And that's what I think is a little bit overhyped.
Yeah, I do. I agree. I think all the technology is overhyped. I honestly do. I think it's all bullshit because not all of it, but everybody's looking for the easy answer of like, and they're all looking for these technical solutions. That's why you look at anybody's tech stack in any organization and it's an absolute rat's nest because they don't know how to implement it and they're all looking for I get email like, hey John, what's the perfect template? What's the perfect thing? Just like, there isn't, shut up. Why don't you do some work? And it's dumbing down. So this is where I kind of disagree with Kyle a little bit. I think we're actually in a transition phase. I think it's probably going to take 5 to 10 years, but we are dumbing down the sales rep with the technology, even though we should be empowering the sales reps. And because we're dumbing down, because most sales reps are literally looking through, looking for these, I love SalesLoft and partner with SalesLoft. I love Outreach, yay. But these tools are literally turning reps into template monkeys. And all they're doing is taking marketing templates, basically putting them into SalesLoft, pressing play and seeing what happens. And I fundamentally don't understand the need for a sales rep if I were to do that. I think we're actually I think sales reps right now are teaching the machines how to do their job that will eventually come over and say, because people say they buy from people. Like Donnie said, I agree with that. And that is once I'm in the sales process, I need to trust you. I want to ask you some questions. But the beginning of the sales process, I'd actually rather not talk to a sales rep until I have to. And so if I could go in through technology and kind of self-select, or if technology, think about it this way. All right, let's go B2B versus B2C. Okay. How much better of an experience is it to be sitting there on, after you Googled a couple of things or whatever, or that all of a sudden on Facebook, something pops up and you're like, holy shit, I want something like that. Right. And then you click on it asks you. I was actually meeting with a guy last night where, no joke, this new technology, what he does is he's figured it out. It's just for public companies. he's figured out an algorithm to, like, we talk a lot about like finding triggers and making like doing your research on an account and figuring out, okay, you know, you just opened up a new office, you just launched a new product, so I think you might be in need of my service, okay? But that's me taking a guess, and that's better than a template. So that's one. That now there's intent data where somebody's actually on G2 Crowd and searches that, or Tech Target and searches something. So it's like, oh, that shows intent. But, you know, again, now we're working with people who kind of think they know what they're looking for, whatever. This new tool that this guy came up with, he actually goes and looks at all the public information. If you're a publicly traded company, he looks at your 10K, he looks at all the press releases and the articles, he looks at your EBITDA and all that other stuff. It's all public knowledge. And he figured out this algorithm that shows for big corporations where they're spending their money, where they're investing, where their higher profit margins are, and how they're shifting their spend in certain areas. So he could say, look, don't guess. This is where they're spending money. This is where, when the CEO just talked about this, that they need that type of stuff. So now we can go in with, hey, by the way, I know all your, you know what I mean? I know where you guys are going from a strategy standpoint with this algorithm. So now you have that type of technology, and you marry it up with some messaging that speaks about where your solution fits into that on the front end side of the house, and share some insights and some data and ask some questions around that type of stuff to just validate if that's the case. Like, first of all, 22-year-old kids can't do that. Technology can, right? And I could eventually set up some machines to be able to kind of listen to that information and start serving you information that's super, super relevant. So all of a sudden one day you wake up in your inbox and there's a solution in front of you that is like, holy shit, I can't believe that's even an option right there, because we were just talking about that on our earnings report. And that actually speaks directly to, how did they know that? You know what I mean? Like, so that side of the house, I think SDRs and BDRs, my personal, and I'm already seeing, I don't think about it, I know it, they're all moving under sales. They're all moving away from sales and under marketing and operations. That role, the SDR role, will be SDR, BDR, will be marketing operations, because it's going to be about leveraging the technology and the tools to then make the connection. And it's like, I mean, the vision, and it's been overused, but I'll use it, is Iron Man, right? These sales reps of the future is not just the person, but the person plus the technology. So the suit, right? So that's why Tony Stark, he had to have the suit to fight these aliens or he'd get killed. But now it's also the AI with Jarvis, because without Jarvis, the suit's just a clunk of metal, right? So you take all that stuff, but then you have to have somebody who knows what the hell they're talking about with some business acumen to be able to make that connection. And that ain't some 22-year-old kid. That 22-year-old kid is going to be marketing and operations to push some buttons and gain some insights and feed it to somebody who actually, like a customer success person, who has the knowledge to be able to make the connection there. My humble opinion.
Point there. Yeah, I think we'll just end it actually right there. That was really powerful. We do have a couple other topics I did want to cover, but you know, it's really great that we've already been coming up on time. You guys have said really incredible things. I just really want to, you know, thank our panel today. I know I have a lot to think about. It's great to kind of get out of the trenches of, you know, being so laser focused on my deals, and really actually hearing from experts in the field and having a much, you know, high level, better understanding of kind of what I do on a daily basis and what it really means for my company, not just myself and my book of business. So really thank you guys so much. And I'd be remiss if I didn't quickly mention the company who, you know, signs my checks and keeps the fridge stocked with LaCroix, which is, of course, Mixmax. So just kind of quickly, for those who are not as familiar with Mixmax, you know, there is no denying that there's been kind of a wave of mass emailing tools. John, you've been talking about that, you know, really pummel your customers for just the sake of productivity. And so really Mixmax is built with the kind of the objective of having a better conversations with customers while also taking care of the busy work with smart technology. So we believe you should treat your customers like people. People sell from people via Donfather, not data points. So if you're interested, be sure to check out mixmax.com. We have free trials, so you can go ahead and just test out the tool for yourself. Again, John, Kyle, Don, appreciate your time today so much. And thank you guys all for joining us. I believe we have a recording that we will also send out shortly. So thank you guys again.
Kyle, John, Roxy, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roxy.